Sons and daughters of Mother Africa, welcome aboard Flight African Legendaries. This is flight number 2. I'm your captain speaking. We'll be flying at an altitude of 19th century. My name is Moriah Mark. Welcome, enjoy. I don't know what you guys will do, or pengine ni sisi tu. Back in high school, if we knew we've done an exam and tomorrow we're going to do a revision of the paper, we'll always come wearing extra clothes. You wear an extra set of pants because you knew the beating that will come. Anyway, I digress. In the year 1492, Christopher Columbus, all the way from Europe, goes all the way to a new land, which was later named the Americas. And the transatlantic trade, well, I still remember the trade because of the beating I got from high school. That's why we had to wear extra sets of pants. So yeah, where the transatlantic trade that will happen across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, we had slaves being transported all the way to Americas to work in the fields. And Africans worked as slaves. So around 1820, this is actually Dorchester County, somewhere in Maryland. We have Harriet Green and Benjamin Ross. They are parents to 9 children. Among the children, we have one beautiful girl by the name Araminta. Araminta actually means the defender. We'll get to know why or how she actually did it. This is actually a girl who grew up to be later known as the Moses of her people.
Harriet Tubman was called the Moses of her people.
At around, her mama used to work as a cook, and her dad will work in the timber business, actually, not business, but somewhere in the fields, but he will major in timber work in a nearby plantation. So she, being one of the daughters of the house or in the house, she had to take care of her other siblings. And when she was around 5 years old, she was sent out to go work in the fields, but she will work with a certain man in setting up muscat traps. So due to the swampy conditions, she will become sick often, and eventually the man gave up, working with her. And one advantage is that her mama was a very good herbalist, so she will take good care of her. So her boss, the man, can't work with this person and quite unreliable. So her original owner leased her out again to another person, another boss. And this new boss was now known as Miss Susan. Well, as kids, I don't know about you guys, but we all loved sugar. And sugar was there in the bowl, and we'd all like. Anyway, I digress. Yep, she will take care of Miss Susan's kids. And at one time, I remember from the little history I've read, every single time Miss Susan's child would wake up and the child would cry, she will get beaten up. So this actually led to her wearing an extra set of clothes. Remember me asking you what you guys used to do? Yeah, she'll actually wear an extra set of clothes. Yep. So this actually went on quite often because child wakes up, cries, gets beaten, so it becomes a routine. Wakati mwingine, there's one time Miss Susan was having an argument with her husband, and Araminta actually timed when Miss Susan is actually facing away from her. She's there having the argument with her husband, and she saw it as an opportune moment. Ta-da! She saw it as an opportune moment to some sugar from the sugar bowl. But I guess luck was not on her side. It was at that moment that Miss Susan turned and saw her licking or eating sugar from the bowl, and she gave her one hell of a beating that Araminta had to actually run away for actually a few weeks. Though she later on came back, but well, Miss Susan could no longer work with her, so she was sent again to her original master. Her original owner was Mr. Edward. So yeah, sent back to Mr. Edward. Mr. Edward had to put her in the fields because every single person that gets Araminta as a slave is always complaining and has to send her back. So yeah, put her in the fields to go work there. Well, didn't take long, of course. As usual, released again to another nearby plantation. She and her two brothers worked there for quite some time, and at one time, I think they said enough is enough, and they actually ran away. But didn't take long, they placed a bounty of I think $100 back then. So it didn't take long for them to be found. They actually came back.
She felt that she would be sold away because she was viewed as a sickly person. She and two of her brothers ran away, and the brothers decided they would return to the plantation. And she, instead of abandoning them, turned around, went back with them to the plantation.
Well, at age 13, here she is. As I said, she was known as the defender. Well, Araminta simply means the defender. So the slaves overseer actually sees one boy who tries to escape. This boy comes and hides in the house where Minty is. Akuja anajificha pale, and the overseer who is actually following him comes, naingia pale, funga mlango. So there's only one entrance, one exit. And while in there, the overseer takes a 2-pound weight.
Was hit by a lead weight mistakenly, but that lead weight caused her to experience narcolepsy for the rest of her life.
She actually went back to work bleeding. She remained untreated for several days. The fracture in her skull led to her having seizures, and she would oftenly collapse. Well, I am not quite a good Christian. Never have I ever been, but she says that she would often get visions when she would faint. She would get visions. Let me also say this, she actually preferred the Old Testament of the Bible, which would majorly focus on the freeing of the slaves, as compared to the New Testament, which mainly talked about obedience. So yeah, that is at age 13. At 13, she has a fractured skull. Age 23, gets married to a man who's 5 years older. Why do women like kwa nini mnapenda ama okay, sawa, wacha niache. Yep. So gets married to a man by the name John Tubman. John Tubman is actually 5 years older than Minty. So her name gets changed from Araminta Rose to Araminta Tubman, but she also changed her name from Araminta to Harriet in the honor of her mother. So Her name by now is actually Harriet Tubman. That's a new name. So the marriage was a little bit complicated. I do not understand why, but yeah, it was complicated because John was actually a freed slave. In 1849, I think so. Yeah, in 1849, her original owner, Mr. Edward, dies. And in his will, he had written that his slaves should be freed. But in comes a new owner who rejects the will, or he actually denies the slaves the free no freedom. Yeah, sure. So in comes a new owner, rejects or denies the slaves their freedom. Hii kitu ilikwaza sana Harriet Tubman, her family, cause yeah, they were supposed to go free. Ilimkwaza sana. And one day while working in the fields, she decides enough is enough. And she actually, with her brothers, two other brothers, she disappears. But her brothers, they chicken in and they decide to go back. But Araminta goes ahead and disappears. She goes towards the north in some state in, I think, Philadelphia, if I'm not wrong, where there were other people who were trying to, slave. They were actually rescuing slaves. They were anti-slave, whatever, blah blah blah, activists. Let me call them so, for lack of a better term. So yeah, she goes to the north, and this is actually where her new career begins, where she now becomes the Underground Railroad conductor. She now kazi yake sasa inaanza kuwa kusaidia ama kuokoa slaves. Goes all the way to the south during especially the winter and especially at night. Goes to the south to rescue slaves, take them towards the north. Mainly their main target was to go towards Canada, which was by then a British, I think a British colony. So yeah, so they were rescuing slaves all the way from the south, taking them up north. And this is something she will do often. But one thing in particular is that Araminta, or rather Harriet Tubman, she always carried a gun with her. It was for two purposes. Number one, of course, to scare anyone who had second thoughts, because once you decide to go up north, there was no turning back. So yeah, it was to scare anybody who had second thoughts. And again, she actually used the gun for her own self-protection. She says she was, or she during her period of running the underground railroad, she never encountered a time where she had to fire a single shot. She never actually did so. Harriet Tubman akawa deadly sana in a way that, during her new career, in a way that a bounty was placed on her head. Sasa anybody ambaye anasaidia anyone or any slave from escaping, you become a threat. But Harriet had one goal in mind: to rescue her parents, her aged parents, and her siblings. So at one time, she even had to come up with plans and tricks of how to, they now had to put up roadblocks. She had to come up with ways of how to pass through these blocks. One time she went and came across a roadblock, or some two men on horses. She was carrying a chicken on her hand, and of course on the other she had her gun. But when she saw the two men on the horse, what she did was release the chicken and started chasing the chicken, created some sort of drama. The men just stood there on their horses and laughed at her while she was chasing her chicken. She ensured there's commotion, there's drama, and these men actually got their focus was actually diverted from what they were actually placed there to do. Yeah. So she came up with tricks on how to evade these roadblocks and how to get past these blocks. She was never arrested, never caught. In 1861 to around 1865, I believe, there was now the American War, and she got some duties there due to her prowess in herbal knowledge, and she knew how to cook, of course, and she also worked as a laundress. So yeah, so the service, the Union soldiers, they needed her for her services, and well, this is the time where Abraham Lincoln had to declare, the slaves. He had to put a declaration that all slaves were to be freed. I think that's what they call the emancipation or something. And emancipation was declared in January of 1863 by the then President Abraham Lincoln. And so she formed a group of spies. Remember, she was, well, very clever, and I've mentioned she will have various tricks of how to get past roadblocks. So at times she'll disguise as a man, those tricks that she will, and then ensure there's drama, various things that she will do. So in 1863, formed a group of spies who would go spy on the states where there are slaves, and then, of course, help in these slaves, what do you call it, escaping. Yeah, it's more like a rescue mission. So they were doing it for the service, for the Union soldiers. So after the war, I know this is a very short story. I know it's a long story, but I'm trying to make it shorter. After the war, she marries or gets married to Nelson Davis. Remember, we had talked of John Tubman, who she got married to at the age of 23. So let me now explain why she divorced or she left the marriage. There's this one time when, you remember, Harriet Tubman was under slavery. She was an enslaved woman. But John Tubman was actually a free man. He was, well, he's black here, just like her, but she was free, or rather, he was free, sorry. He was free, unlike her. At one time, she explained the whole plan of how to escape to John, and John was not happy with it. He even threatened to report her to the authorities. Well, she had to go alone. Eventually, the marriage started having, those ups and downs, and she had to leave. At one time, she came back for John, but found out that John, he had actually remarried. John Tubman has remarried. The war has ended. So Harriet Tubman goes all the way to New York, settled down with a man by the name Nelson Davis, he was also an enslaved man. So at least she finds someone who, they share some common ground as compared to John, who is a free man. Yep. They never had kids, actually. They adopted a daughter. Harriet Tubman went ahead, fought for women's rights, voting rights, and all other rights, as long as, or alongside other activists who, well, can't really remember their names. You can have them in the description box. 1911. So remember, at the age of 13, she had a head hit by a 2-pound weight by the overseer. And now here she is, goes for treatment, undergoes surgery, but later on her health starts deteriorating, and 1911 goes to Home for the Aged. In 1930, unfortunately, we lost her. And her last words were, "I go to prepare a place for you." It said those were her last words. Also said that Harriet Tubman is the most famous civilian, and her image will replace that of President Jackson on the $20 bill of the United States. Yeah, I believe that's it about Harriet Tubman. I know most people don't know about Harriet Tubman, but yeah, that's basically it about her. I was going through her story, and reminded me of, my childhood days of licking sugar, back in high school, and being caned, and you had to wear extra sets of pants. Yeah, lots of things that we did. Yeah, she was a tough lady. Oh, might also have forgotten. Eventually, she managed to rescue her aged parents and her whole family, her siblings included. Yeah, and she rescued a total of, it said, over 300 slaves.
Harriet Tubman was an incredibly brave African American woman. She sacrificed her own life, and she freed probably over 1,000 people. And she said she could have freed a lot more if they had known they actually were slaves.
So that's the story of Harriet Tubman, the Moses of her people. And yeah, I think we're done.